Listen to me for a moment. Close your eyes if it helps. Shut out the noise around you and focus on the beating of your own heart. That sound, that steady rhythm is living proof of a force that refuses to quit. That heartbeat isn't just a random pulse. It's a reminder of life's unyielding drive, a voice whispering, you have a purpose. Each and every one of you sitting here carries that insistent drum within, a sign that you're meant to do something that truly matters. This moment, right now, is your chance to decide how you'll answer that calling. Because when we talk about how one person can change the entire world, we're not just reciting a catchy slogan. We're talking about action, about raw determination, about you lighting a spark inside yourself that sets everything else ablaze. I stand before you today not to recite pretty words or make empty promises, but to remind you of what you already have buried within, the power, the hope, the capacity for greatness. People often wonder why some individuals move mountains while others barely move a pebble. But let me tell you, it's not about lucky breaks or perfect timing or circumstances laid out neatly by the universe. It's about believing deep in your bones that you matter, that your voice, your hands, your choices, they carry a weight that can shift the axis of someone's life, maybe even the entire world. We live in times when headlines can crush your spirit, when fear peddles itself like a cheap commodity. In times like these, it's easy to feel small, insignificant, overshadowed. But that's exactly why it's so important to cling to the truth that one person, just one, can rip through the darkness with a beam of light. This truth is not a fairy tale or a daydream. It's an urgent reminder that your presence, your gift, your story can push humanity one step closer to something remarkable. Maybe you walked in here carrying doubt on your shoulders, feeling weighed down by disappointments. Maybe you told yourself that the world's just too big, that your voice is too quiet, that nobody really cares what you have to say. I'm here to tear down that lie. Look around you. Look into the eyes of the people who share this space. You think every single one of them is 100% certain of their path. You think I was always sure of mine. Of course not. We all wrestle with insecurity, with the haunting question, do I matter? But as real as doubt is, as heavy as it can feel, it's also an invitation to find the courage to rise above it, to declare that yes, you matter beyond measure. Now, I want you to hold that feeling of possibility close, like a precious gem in your hand, because in the next moments, we're going to explore exactly why one person can shift the entire course of the planet. And by cone person, I don't mean some distant hero or an icon from history. I mean you, not the idealized version of yourself, not the you from a movie, but the flesh and blood human being who breathes and hopes and dreams right here, right now. When we embrace the idea of our individual power, we get to challenge a world that says, you're not enough. We get to defy the voice in our own head that says, play small and keep quiet. And we get to dare to be bigger, bolder, better, all in service of something greater than ourselves. So, if you've ever wondered whether you can create ripples big enough to become waves, wonder no more. I'm urging you to lean in, to listen with your mind and your heart open, because that ripple starts with you. I want to share a crucial insight with you. Everything significant in human history began as a thought, a single idea in a single mind, a fleeting concept that refused to be ignored. At first, it might have seemed like a fantasy, a wild dream. People might have laughed or rolled their eyes or dismissed it as impossible. But that's how every major shift in the human experience begins. It starts small, fragile, almost invisible. Then it grows legs, gains momentum, and rolls forward like a boulder racing downhill. If you allow your mind to welcome big ideas, you become that unstoppable boulder, and nobody can stand in the path of a mind truly convinced of its purpose. I recall reading about a young woman who saw her community struggling with poverty, children without adequate schooling, and families who felt forgotten by the rest of the world. She didn't have wealth. She didn't have connections. And she certainly didn't have a grand podium which to speak. But she had a vision. Every day she went door to door, talking to neighbors, rallying volunteers, gathering donations, looking for ways to bring teaching programs and mentorship opportunities to these children. She learned from every failure and carried on, no matter how many times people shut their doors on her. And slowly, that vision she harbored sprouted from the ground. It attracted new allies. It caught the attention of local leaders. It became a living, breathing reality. Now, an entire generation in that neighborhood is growing up with access to education and a sense of hope. One person did that. Her idea became a movement, and that movement continues to multiply. If she had listened to the negative whispers around her, it's too big of a problem. You're just one person. You'll never get the funding. Her idea would still be stuck in the shadows. Instead, she chose to reject that timid narrative. She believed one seed can crack concrete if it's nurtured by determination. And that's what I want you to grasp. Not only do ideas have power, they have the power to outlast you. They have the power to continue thriving when you're no longer physically there, because they take root in other hearts. But there's a danger we face if we ignore this truth. If we shrug our shoulders and say, I can't do it, we run the risk of letting cynicism win. We let negativity breed, feeding on our inactivity and our silence. We create a vacuum of leadership and compassion, allowing people with destructive motives to claim the space we surrendered. Ultimately, we stand still, paralyzed by indecision, while the world keeps turning without our input. That's not the legacy you want to leave. And I know at times it's easy to get overwhelmed by the magnitude of what you don't control. Yet the solution begins with one clear step: claim your idea, feed it every day, and keep going when obstacles block your path. Listen to the quiet voice inside you that whispers about how things could be better, how you can be the one to start. Engage that part of yourself that's unafraid to dream big, because when you do, you become a magnet for opportunities and for people who share your vision. You begin to transform the conversation from, can one person do anything, to, if not me, then who? And that shift, that fundamental reorientation, can stir hearts in ways you've never imagined. That's your challenge: to stay open, to keep your eyes trained on the horizon, to transform the intangible into something real. Whenever self-doubt creeps in, I want you to remember that young woman who changed a whole neighborhood. I want you to remember that every major movement began in someone's mind as a fragile dream that refused to die. And I want you to ask yourself, why not me? Why not now? Because the only one who can truly silence your dream is you. We all crave recognition, that sense of being seen and appreciated. But I want to tell you something that might surprise you. The world changes most dramatically not when you seek fame for yourself, but when you seek to elevate others. That's right. Shifting the narrative from what can I get to what can I give is a monumental step. Giving doesn't necessarily mean emptying your pockets or sacrificing everything you have. Sometimes it's about offering a kind word, a helping hand, or an affirmation that lets someone know they are worthy. It's about using your talent, your time, or your platform, no matter how small it might feel, to shine a light on someone else. Picture the most influential people in history. People like Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi. These were individuals who placed service at the center of their vision. They weren't seeking stardom, they were seeking justice, dignity, and compassion for others. Their power came not from a desire to dominate, but from a desire to lift. That's the incredible truth. One person can change the world by channeling their energy into elevating the people around them. You might be surprised how little gestures ripple outward. Consider the story of a high school teacher who noticed a student sitting alone, wearing tattered clothes and rarely speaking. She recognized something was off. She could have just moved on. She could have said, "It's not my business," but she didn't. She reached out with empathy and discovered this student was dealing with problems no kid should ever have to face. Hunger, no stable home, a sense of abandonment. The teacher started by giving the student something to eat. Then she gave him extra learning materials, introduced him to community support programs, and connected him with mentors. Step by step, she pulled him into a circle of care. Over time, that student found his footing, excelled academically, and went on to become someone who now dedicates his life to mentoring young people in similar situations. That teacher might not get headlines or awards, but do you think the student cares about that? Absolutely not. Because she changed his world. And who's to say how many other worlds he will change, fueled by that kindness? However, when we ignore the needs of others, we set the stage for disconnection, isolation, and a breakdown of our social fabric. The consequences of "not my problem" can be devastating because apathy is contagious. It spreads. When you decide your neighbor's troubles aren't worth your attention, you create cracks in the foundation of empathy that holds our communities together. The solution lies in recognizing the opportunities around you. Look for ways to serve, big or small. Use your strengths to help others see their own worth. Listen more than you speak. Pay attention to the quiet voices, the overlooked stories. When you do that, you become a beacon of hope, a steady force that pulls people together rather than pushing them apart. It doesn't require a vast network or a pile of resources. It requires a heart that's open to seeing the greatness in another person. And here's the real kicker. When you help someone else shine, your own light grows. It's not a zero-sum game. It's an act of multiplication. So the next time you catch yourself wondering how you can leave your mark, consider turning the spotlight towards someone else. Elevate them and watch how it comes full circle. That's not only how you change someone's life, it's how you leave a permanent, positive imprint on the world. And what about resilience? Let me tell you something. Every path to meaningful change is paved with roadblocks. You're going to stumble. You're going to bruise your knees. You're going to question why you even started in the first place. That's part of the journey. But if you can push through the pain, if you can find that grit that lives deep down in your soul, you become unstoppable. This is what separates wishful thinking from real world impact. Because it's easy to dream when things are smooth. It's another thing entirely to keep going when everything screams, quit. I remember hearing about a man who launched a small community center in a crime-ridden neighborhood. Within months, the building was vandalized. He lost key volunteers who became discouraged. Funding dried up because donors didn't believe the project could survive in such a hostile environment. But he refused to bow down. He patched up the broken windows. He reached out to new volunteers. He rallied the local businesses, even the ones that initially said no. He made speeches on street corners, in church basements, anywhere that would allow him to share his vision of a safer, more united community. Over time, he built enough trust that local officers, ex-convicts, and neighborhood kids came together to run programs that offered alternatives to violence. The center became a spark of positivity, a place where rival groups would sit at the same table and talk. Did he face setbacks? Absolutely. But he grew stronger each time he stood back up. That's the power of resilience. Without it, we let adversity define us. We let cynicism creep in and tell us it's not worth it. We surrender to the voices that say, you're wasting your time. And in doing so, we shut the door on the transformations that are possible. Resilience is the key that unlocks progress. So how do you cultivate it? You begin by expecting obstacles and preparing yourself mentally to navigate them. You surround yourself with people who believe in your cause. People who remind you of your own strength when you forget. You create small victories along the way. Incremental wins that feed your spirit. And whenever you get knocked down, you remind yourself why you started in the first place. Because your why is the armor that protects you from the sting of disappointment. Holding on to resilience also means granting yourself grace. You will mess up at some point. You will make mistakes. That's human. But don't let those missteps morph into reasons to abandon the journey. Let them become lessons, stepping stones that refine your approach. There's a raw and beautiful power in owning your flaws, in letting them sharpen you instead of break you. The world respects those who persist, who refuse to let adversity be the final word. And that's where real change radiates from, the individual who chooses to say, this matters too much to give up. If you can carry resilience in your heart, every setback can become a platform for a stronger comeback. That's how mountains are moved. That's how old narratives are rewritten. And that's how one person armed with unyielding will can bend history in a new direction. Now, let's gather everything we've explored. vision, service, and resilience, and crystallize these lessons into a single understanding. You have everything you need to ignite change right where you stand. The question is whether you'll commit to doing something about it. If you walk away from here thinking, that was interesting, but never let it guide your actions, then we've both wasted our breath. But if you walk away believing that this world can be shaped by the courageous acts of ordinary people, then we've planted a seed that can grow beyond measure. I want to remind you of how we started with that steady heartbeat in your chest. That beat is not random. It's a constant living signal that you're here for a reason. Embrace that reason. Nurture it. Let it propel you toward the horizon of possibilities you once thought were out of reach. Revisit the stories we shared. The young woman who refused to let an idea die. The teacher who saved a student's future by choosing empathy over indifference. The relentless organizer who wouldn't let vandalism and lack of funds destroy his community center. They each faced doubt, fear, and real, tangible barriers. Yet they chose to step forward when others stepped back. They lit the spark that became a blazing fire. And here's the common thread. Every one of them was, in the beginning, just one person. Someone no different from you or me. Someone who had bills to pay, insecurities to battle, and no guaranteed roadmap to success. They were never 100% sure how things would turn out, but they tried. They kept going. And as they did, they discovered that conviction and persistence can create miraculous outcomes. If there's a single word that should echo in your mind from this day forward, let it be possibility. Because possibility is the oxygen of hope. When you believe change is possible, you take the steps required to make it happen. You reach out your hand to someone in need. You speak words of encouragement into a hopeless situation. You muster the courage to face rejection a dozen times because you trust there might be a yes on the 13th. That is what fuels revolutions, innovations, and personal transformations. And let's be honest, the world needs that belief now more than ever. We can't afford to wait for mythical saviors. We can't afford to rest idly, hoping someone else will fix our broken systems or heal our wounded hearts. If you crave a world with more empathy, be empathetic. If you want a world where justice reigns, stand up for fairness wherever you can. If you demand integrity from leadership, start by being honest in your own life. You might think, what difference does that make? But imagine a stadium full of people all doubting the power of their individual choice. Now imagine that same stadium if each person decided, I'm going to do one thing today to make a difference. Suddenly, we have thousands of actions, thousands of small but meaningful steps. That's how you create momentum. That's how you shift the paradigm from hopelessness to empowerment. If you feel fear or uncertainty, good. That means you're stepping outside your comfort zone, and that's where real growth happens. Don't let discomfort be your stop sign. Let it be your green light, your cue to move forward with even more determination. Because every hero's journey, every breakthrough, starts in the realm of the unknown, of the unsure, of the vulnerable. There's a magnetic pull in your soul that wants to contribute, to matter, to leave footprints that can't be washed away by time. Heed that pull. Let it guide you toward the action that calls your name. And remember, changing the world doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's a series of tiny acts that accumulate into a tidal wave of transformation. It's a neighbor who checks on the elderly. It's a volunteer who mentors a child. It's a person who steps up to lead a team at work with integrity and respect. It's someone who decides to speak up against injustice when it's easier to stay silent. All those seemingly small acts add up. They create a tapestry of compassion and courage that stretches far beyond your line of sight. But let's get practical for a second. Inspiration without implementation is wasted breath. So I'm asking you to pinpoint one thing you care about. Just one. It could be education, climate change, mental health, youth mentorship, whatever your heart aches for. Then find one action you can take this week. Not next year, not someday, but this week. Put it on your calendar. Commit to it like you would commit to a friend in need. Show up for that action wholeheartedly. And after you do it, reflect on how it felt, what you learned, and how you can expand on that step next time. That's how you build a pattern of contribution. That's how you anchor your passion in reality. And you don't have to do it alone. Find allies, people who share your concern, people willing to walk alongside you. A small, dedicated team can outwork and outlast a large but indifferent crowd. When you stand together with people who believe in the same cause, you multiply the effect of your energy. You discover new ideas, new strategies, new ways to overcome the challenges you inevitably face. You also discover how strong and resilient you can be when your cause is bigger than your fear. This is your call to action. This is the moment you decide whether these words remain a passing breeze or become the breath that invigorates your purpose. I know it's daunting. I know it's easier to say, let's see if someone else does it. But remember, if not me, who? If not now, when? Time doesn't wait for us to gather our courage. Life marches on with or without our approval. And every day we delay is a day the world remains stuck in place. I challenge you not to let the gifts you carry go unused. Don't let your story be one of regret or missed chances. Let your story be one of daring, of stepping up to the plate, of daring to make a dent in the world. That single act of daring can spark a movement you never anticipated. And if you ever doubt, if you ever falter, close your eyes again and hear that heartbeat. It's there to remind you that as long as you breathe, you have purpose. As long as your heart beats, you can stand up and strive to make things better. So I urge you to hold on to hope like it's the most precious thing you own, because it is. Hope is the bedrock of change. Let it fuel your vision, guide your service, and sustain your resilience. Let it remind you that big victories are just a collection of small ones strung together over time. Let it tell you that the future is not set in stone, but shaped by the hands of those who dare to mold it. You are one person, but in you lies infinite possibility. Believe that. Let it seep into your words, your actions, your very presence. Let it fill every step you take from this day forward. And when people ask you, do you really think one person can change the world? You can smile and say, just watch me. Because that, my friends, is the heartbeat of change echoing in every courageous soul that refuses to settle for less. It starts now. It starts with you. And I can't wait to see how far you'll go.